Hey everyone, it's Neo Reality Entertainment. Right now I'm going to be a little bit more quieter because I'm in a house with family members and I still want to make some videos. I wanted to actually try out the thoughts videos onto this, but I wanted to talk about the one thing that many people have been wondering in the Star Wars community. What exactly was George Lucas's sequel trilogy that he had planned? Well, here's the thing. We don't know the full details. Like, a lot of details came out, and mostly it was me thinking, oh, wait, this must have been before Disney bought Lucasfilms, and this was before the prequel trilogy because a lot of stuff doesn't add up when you could take into account that there was the expanded universe. So there's a chance that these original three movies, like how Luke was supposed to die in episode 9 after training Leia, that clearly was going to be the sequel trilogy after the original trilogy, but because of issues that happened in Lucas's personal life, they canceled that plan, and the prequels were made, and everyone hated them, and we all know how that goes. For me personally, I loved them. They were the things that got me into Star Wars, but I'm not here to talk about that to in major extent. Except for Episode 1. You see, we finally learned what the sequel trilogy was originally going to be. You see, George Lucas was revealed in an interview where he says, talking about they were from an Inside Editions companion to the AMC series, James Cameron's Story of Science Fiction, where he explains this. George Lucas says this: the next three Star Wars films were going to get into the microbiotic world, but there's this world of creatures that operate differently than we do. I call them the Wills, and the Wills are the ones who actually control the universe. They feed off the Force. If I had held on to the company, I could have done it and it would have been done. Of course, a lot of fans would have hated it, just like they did Phantom Menace and everything, but at least the whole story would have been told from beginning to end. So, the last part was mixed up. I mixed it up, but you get the gist of it. So, this is very interesting. He was not going to be more focusing on the original trilogy, but instead be more in tune with the prequel trilogy, and it was going to relate to the Wills. What are the Wills that people are wondering? Well, since this is not mainstream, since not a lot of people actually watched it, they did appear in the Clone Wars series in Season 6, aka The Lost Missions, guiding Yoda to learn how to basically live after death. So, that clearly he was hinting that, yeah, we're going with this. This is where we're going. So, and it was revealed that George Lucas had actually was writing the treatment a year before Disney had bought the company. So clearly he wanted to do the sequel trilogy. He finally said, maybe it's finally time I tell the story I want to do. Like, here's the thing. I know there's this thing that fans like to say, there's what fans want and there's what the creators want. Okay, I'm all for fans getting what they want, but I'm also all for the creators getting what they want. Like there's usually a proper balance. The Force Awakens, that was too fan servicey, and the Last Jedi was considered too studio based. Like, I have a hard time saying it was the creators who made the movie because I have a hard time believing that, because Disney has a very controlling grip on Star Wars, unlike Marvel, because Marvel does not have a prequel trilogy to its name that made people vilify it. So, yeah. When I heard this, I was like, well, he knows people would have hated it, and he's even said in interviews, like, why would I want to make more movies when people tell me I'm a terrible person? And I'm thinking, yeah, because he made movies. That's clearly the worst thing you could possibly do nowadays. It's not like there's a huge controversy with Hollywood stars being accused of horrible crimes. Oh, wait. So, anyways, that's all I'm going to say on that one aspect of Hollywood lately. But I would have actually been very interested in this. Like, I don't know where Luke, Leia, and Han would have been at, but I think George Lucas, in my theory at least, would have been a little bit more respectful towards the new canon. I mean, towards the old canon, the Legends canon, because he was writing these treatments a year before Disney bought the company. So if Disney was secretly making talks with Lucas, then that could be one thing, but there's a chance he wanted to do this himself. In fact, it was revealed that he had actually pitched the whole, I want to do a Han Solo film, which would have explained Han Solo and whatnot, and would have been probably been a lot better explained than Han Solo getting his name from an Imperial officer that contradicts every single thing I ever knew. it makes me question so many things about the original trilogy. It makes me say that doesn't work. You have to make the Empire completely stupid to make that work. But the idea of these wills feeding off the Force and they control the universe, that's a very interesting concept to me. Like, it could, in my mind, tie in with Kreia. Like, imagine if they found a way to resurrect Kreia, Darth Kreia from Knights of the Old Republic 2, and she learned, and she probably, like, in the Philosophy of Kreia video by, actually, he doesn't have a name on YouTube. Yeah, I'm actually surprised how he managed to do that, but anyways. He explained that Kreia wants to kill the Force. She doesn't want the Force because she thinks it's destroying the galaxy by itself, controlling everything, so to speak. And that's an interesting character, but this adds a new layer to that theory. If they had done this, kept the Legends canon, and kept this idea that George Lucas wanted to do, Kreia would have been proven more right than usual because she now knows the Force is also being controlled to an extent by the wills. But the other idea I thought of was, well, okay, who are they going to focus on though? Han, Leia, or Luke? Or is it going to focus on Jaina Solo, Anakin Solo? Well, he's dead by the Yuzhan War. We don't know exactly the time placement we would have placed it at. It could have been set in the far future. It could have been set in the past. It could have been set by the descendants of the Skywalker and Solo family, which would have been interesting. Like, there's a little bit of vagueness, but when I was reading that George Lucas knew fans would have hated it, but he said, I still would have done it. I would have told the story from what I wanted, and I commend him for that, because, like I said, I like the prequels, but I also, because at least that was his movie. Like, I could see, like, okay, when I look at the sequel trilogy, I'm just thinking, or some of the anthology films, I'm just thinking, like, those aren't really, like, they're, like, operating at some form of capacity, the directors getting their vision out, but it feels like it's restricted to an extent. Like, Force Awakens was a play it safe film, Last Jedi was a let's piss everybody off film, but I never got the vibe Rian Johnson or J.J. Abrams had much say, so to speak, like some people like to speculate they did. I kept thinking, there's no way they had complete control over this. Like, I refuse to believe they had complete control over this the way Disney has controlled Star Wars ever since the prequels happened, and using that as their usual excuse to say, well, we need more control over Star Wars and Lucasfilms, and yada yada yada, and less individuality. Like, they don't really treat Lucasfilms like it's Marvel, you know, like Marvel is like part of Disney, but it still is independent company. But yeah, Lucasfilms, in my mind, Kathleen Kennedy's a puppet, but I'll get to her when I eventually can. But the idea of this sequel trilogy that George Lucas wanted to do, focusing on the wills and probably someone trying to stop them, I would have been all for this idea. It would have been adding some new layers to the Force. Like, it wasn't trying to say that, okay, I know a lot of people hated the midichlorians, but honestly, that was, like, possibly the best explanation I could get, for me at least. Like, wait, if the Force evolves with all living beings, why doesn't Han Solo use the Force? Why doesn't Tarkin use the Force? Why doesn't any of these other characters use the Force? Why is it only a select few that use the Force in the ways that we've seen? And the midichlorians, to me, was the best way to describe it. Like, okay, so they're born or gifted with these midichlorians, and they can interact the Force on a more deeper level, and thus interacting with the people that you have to have that have the potential. Like, if they just went ahead and just said the Force selects people, that would have been a little weird, because I don't think the Force would build up 10,000 Jedi Knights and then only build 2 Sith. Like, that just seems really crazy unless they wanted to go cataclysmic apocalypse, which they like to do. But the wills manipulating the Force into their image, to me, that sounds like a lot like the Jedi ignoring their own deities, aka the Force, whenever it clearly gave obvious warning signs, and the Force was like, screw it. I've given you all these heads ups, I've given you all these obvious evidence, and all these hints, and you still can't tell Palpatine's is the Sith Lord you're looking for, even when he's right in front of you, and now you're saying you don't know. Okay. Yeah, I'm still on that, but the Wills, like I said, we saw them in the Clone Wars, and it was actually the original title of the Star Wars movies, The Journal of the Wills. But the Wills controlling the Force and basically controlling the will of the universe, that sounds like the Cosmic Force to an extent, and feeding them off the Force. Like, it would have also kind of... Yeah, I can also see some negatives to this. Like, I can see that some people probably didn't like it because basically what you're saying is every single event is because of the Wills. Since he said, and the Wills are the ones who actually control the universe. They feed off the Force. So what it basically means is that you intended for all these events to happen leading to this event. And I felt like, can we just not do that? Like, can we just let the characters make the mistakes instead of having the Wills be the cause of all of it? Like, it would diminish my belief of the Jedi hypocrisy. It would show that the Sith are not as self-destructive, so to speak. I mean, like they are, but still. But they could make the argument then that the Wills are doing it. So yeah, there's a lot of positives and negatives I see to the whole idea that George Lucas had, but it would have been actually interesting and probably would not involve making all the characters we grew up with be miserable with their lives because... Oh, God. Yeah, I like Last Jedi. Like I said, I do like The Last Jedi, but I just don't like how they make all these characters who worked so hard to get this dream ultimately get ruined and screwed over and be miserable. Like, that's not really happy for me. Like, if they, like, sacrifice themselves in a heroic stand because they did what they felt was right, instead of feeling more, like, out of obligation, so to speak, yeah. But let's see how Han went. Han died because he tried to rescue his son from the dark side. Yeah, that failed. And he's been living with this guilt for God knows how many years. Leia, oh boy, Leia's life. Like, after the New Republic started crumbling from within, and she was condemned because she's dare related to Darth Vader despite everything she's done for the Republic and the Rebellion, they cast her out and called her Lady Vader. And Luke, following the teachings of the Old Order to the extreme, and ultimately condemning someone without actual, doubt, a reason of doubt. So, yeah, like, that's my one major gripe. Why are these characters having to be miserable in order to tell the story? Just to give all these other characters that we don't know to shine and overtake the other ones. Like, you could have had them taught them or something, or was that simply too much because you hate George Lucas to an extent? And hate the Star Wars franchise, you just see a big name, lots of money, there. But I would have loved and interested to see George Lucas's take on what his sequel trilogy would have been. The Wills, but the question I think a lot of people would have is, how would this tie with the expanded universe? Would it take place 100 or so years after the events of the Legacy era? Or would this happen after the original trilogy? Or would this happen in between and therefore negate, like, the Yuzon Vong? Yeah, there's a lot of vagueness to it. Unless, like, I don't know if we'll ever get more details, but this idea he had actually does sound very interesting, and it would have been very intriguing how the Force would have worked, and the Wills, like, were the Wills going to be villain characters, or are they going to be people who believe that this is how the world needs to operate, or were they just people who had good intentions, but as history has shown, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So, we may never know the full context and details. We might not. All I know is that this would have been a fairly interesting movie. It would have been incredibly despised because he made the prequels, therefore it's gonna suck. Like, okay. just let me enjoy my Star Wars. So, yeah, those were my thoughts on on Star Wars, George Lucas's sequel trilogy ideas. This was Neo Reality Entertainment. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and donate. Stay tuned for more.